You seek the key, but first you must learn the ways of precision, craft, and performance with Acura's all-electric ZDX. With a premium Bang & Olufsen sound system, up to a 313-mile range, and a Type S variant with an estimated 500 horsepower, the ZDX is their most powerful SUV yet. Unlock the energy when you visit Acura.com to order yours today. Sometimes it takes a different approach to help you unlock your true potential. Capella University's game-changing FlexPath format helps you learn at your own pace and fit earning a degree into your life. From before you enroll to after you graduate, you'll be supported by people who are invested in your success so you can pursue your goals knowing that help is available if you need it. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu. Ryan Estis might be the most successful public speaker on the planet. Like, I've known him for about a decade. We have a really good mutual friend, Scott Cohen, who you might remember has been on this podcast a couple of times, is the ultimate entrepreneur. Ryan and I have become good friends along the way through our friendship with Scott. And he's always been such a great public speaker, and he's an inspirational speaker because he has so much wisdom and knowledge about business and sales and the world, and he speaks all over the place. But now he's written a book with his brother, Chad. Chad is an executive at many different sports teams, like football teams and the Cowboys and all that, and they have many stories to tell. The book's called Prepare for Impact. It's got a section that I highly encourage. People should read the book, but I also really encourage read the 30 Steps to Success and come up with your own 30 steps. That's my one suggestion. But I also really wanted to know from Ryan, how does one be the best at public speaking? How did he start getting his gigs? I didn't know the full story. How did he start charging more and more money? How did he break out on his own and have the confidence to do it? How is he evolving it? Like, what's he going to do when he's older and doesn't want to travel all the time to do this public speaking? These are questions you could ask no matter what industry you're in, and what's the direction of your career and your wealth and your success and so on. How do you transform from one stage to the next and continue that success? So here's Ryan Estis. Such a pleasure to talk to this friend of mine, and I'm sure everyone's going to be impacted by this. And again, his book is Prepare for Impact.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
Ryan, let me ask you this. You are a super successful public speaker. You went from being super successful sales guy. You wrote 30 Steps for Success, and it's become this book now with your brother, Prepare for Impact, driving growth and serving others through the principles of human-centered leadership. First off, most of your public speaking has revolved around the topics in this book, like the 30 Steps to Success and about leadership and management and sales.
Yeah, it's all about sales and leadership. And I would say today, leading through change and leading into the future. But my work is pretty evenly distributed among those two topics. But what's interesting is up until recently, I didn't really leverage the 30 steps. I mean, I was telling you, it really, for me, it was an internal thing. I really was just trying to help out Chad, and he's the one that took the content and actually leveraged it for work. I wasn't promoting the 30 steps. I'd never shown anybody the 30 steps, and until we started discussing how he was using them in a different way. So I never thought they'd be in a book, but it was just art.
Well, what's interesting is that, like, you wrote this as, and we talked about this before, the 30 Steps of Success in Sales, and
Right.
Chad, or the teams Chad worked with, kind of morphed it into the 30 Steps for Success, where it's slightly different. Although sales and success in general are important. Like, for me, I feel like I've never read a sales book, but I've run companies and I had to be the salesman for my companies, whether you're selling a customer or raising money or selling the company or whatever. And There was one point in your steps to success that I really relate to, which is enthusiasm. If you don't, if you don't like internalize the message of what you're trying to sell, like if it, you have to like become one with what you're trying to sell and be so enthusiastic for it, like it's an extension of yourself. That's, I have found, the key to any sale I've ever done.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, in some ways, you could think of selling as the transfer of enthusiasm or the transfer of belief. I mean, ultimately, you want to get somebody to believe about the future, what you believe, that, your circumstances, business opportunity is going to be better served if we move forward in partnership. And so that, transferring belief requires a lot of confidence, a lot of enthusiasm, and a lot of interest in helping somebody else get a great result, whether that's a return on their investment, growth in their business, solving a big problem, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, that one, that I think that's spot on.
And you make the point in the book, you can't just be enthusiastic about anything. You have to truly believe this is the way.
Yeah, I think if you don't believe, you're doing yourself an incredible disservice, and
Right.
you should probably go find something else to sell, um, because that's a selling. Look, selling, and particularly today, it's a hard job. I mean, you're going to deal with a lot of resistance, a lot of rejection. It's incredibly competitive across many categories. Customers are fundamentally changing; their expectations are skyrocketing. More people are influencing a decision. Technology is altering the landscape. I mean, it's a challenging job, and so to do that in and around something you're not passionate about or you don't necessarily believe in, just for a paycheck, I think is a pretty tough way to make a living.
And so, speaking of which, and speaking of your living, when did you decide to go from sales to public speaking? And just to put it in context, sorry to interrupt. You're probably, out of all the people I've ever met, you're probably the most successful public speaker I know. You are booked 52 weeks out of the year from what I've seen, and I've known you for a long time. You work really hard.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and it's changed a little bit since the pandemic, which we can talk about. But my foray into it is interesting. I had a job. I was the chief strategy officer for an ad agency, and I talked a little bit about that with you. But in that job, as part of our business development strategy, we're doing a lot of trade shows and conferences. And I just realized, if I was the guy on stage, this whole experience around meeting prospects, networking with customers would go a lot better. There'd probably be a lot more interest in us if I could be that guy. I was in a keynote once and I leaned over to one of my sales reps. I was like, I could do that. He said, no, you couldn't. I said, no, I think I could. And that was literally, sort of the beginning of my journey. And it started out, we would actually pay to sponsor these breakfasts. And I would do a little talk in the industry about trends, maybe present a client case study. You know, 20 people would come eat some free scrambled eggs, and then we'd have two decent prospects out of that, and one would close. And so it was working for the business, and I was getting reps in. And then it got bigger and better. And I remember I remember the time we started getting phone calls. I'd go speak at an event, and then I'd come back to the work, and there'd be 6 phone calls. Hey, can that guy come and speak here? Can he come and speak there? What's his rate? And I was like, what in the hell? And so I started researching the business. I hired a coach. I went to night classes at the National Speakers Association.
Okay, what did you hire a coach for? Like, what were you studying in these classes? Like, you already knew how to be a public speaker. I mean, you already knew how to give a talk.
It was, I wanted to, so 2 things. One, I wanted to understand if I was good enough to actually make a living. So, I had a good job. I mean, this was to your point, like the risk of, giving up my career and sort of reinventing myself, which is something you know a lot about, versus staying the course. Is it a real thing? Like, how can you make a living doing this? And the second thing was, I wasn't an entrepreneur. I worked for a big company full of resources. I climbed my way up the ladder. The running the business of it. How do you structure it? Do people have a staff? How do you get bookings? Is there a marketing plan? Like, I wanted to learn about it. So there was a coach, and she wrote this book called The Wealthy Speaker. And I recommended the book. I read it, and I said, I got to find this woman. I looked her up on the internet, called her, and said, I want you to watch videos of me and tell me if I'm good enough to make a living. And she said, that's not exactly how the coaching works, but we can get you down the right path. And so that's what I did. And I worked with her before I ever quit my job.
I think that's smart. So what did she teach you?
So I would say that she helped me understand both the distribution opportunities, so how speeches get booked, and she gave me some sort of line of sight, I think, into the acumen of running the business, and actually did watch video and coach me on, okay, you're pretty good and pretty raw. Here are some things you could do to get better. So I would say those are the three things that we spent time on. But I realized 5 or 6 months into that, whatever it was, we were meeting once or twice a month. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. She asked me to come to a conference. She said, there's a national conference for speakers. You should come. Ironically, it was in New York City. I slept on Scott's couch. This is probably, when is this? 2008, 2009. Tim Ferriss had just published the 4-Hour Workweek. He was doing a breakout. I went to a breakout with Tim Ferriss, got his book. There was probably 30 people in this breakout at this speakers conference. And I was mesmerized with all these people that were there was like thousands of people there. And Scott and I had a good time, and he was pushing me to do it. And on the flight home, I started reading the 4-Hour Workweek. By the time I landed, I'm like, this is what I'm doing. And, that was it, man.
And then what happened?
And so that was, when was that? That was probably July, August. So I started mentally preparing myself. And then in January, which wasn't, by the way, a great time to quit your job, January of 2009, we're like in the middle of like the fallout.
No, like by the way, I was a public speaker then, and it was there weren't a lot of opportunities.
No.
Yeah.
And in my mind, what was going on at the ad agency, like a lot of agencies, were going through layoffs, right? And cutting real deep. And I worked at a division of McCann. And Christmas break, I was like, this thing's falling apart. We got back. Now, I remember on a Wednesday, my boss, our CEO, called. He said, we're going to lay off another 30% of our workforce Friday. And it's kind of giving me my responsibilities and who I was going to have to. And I woke up, I went to bed that night. We went to bed, I didn't sleep. And I just thought, this is it. I got to do it. And, people told me not to for the reason you just said, like no one's going to hire a consultant or a speaker. You're going to ruin your life, ruin your career, all these things. And I remember that night I called my brother and I called Scott and I was like, I think I have to do this. And they both were like, go, you'll figure it out. And I picked up that phone in the morning and I said, can you put me into this round of layoffs? I'm out. And that was it.
Was your boss upset?
He was. He very disappointed, and I think he thought I was making a huge mistake. I mean, part of his thought was, this is a terrible time to do this. This is the last thing you should be doing right now. Like, if you really want to do this, he's like, give it a couple of years and wait till circumstances are better. And I just thought, in 2 years, I'm going to be different. The world, like. I had to do it. Like I geared up everything I had in me to. Now, by the way, I was terrified while I was doing this. Make no mistake. Like anxiety, couldn't sleep. I'd worked there 15 years, man. It was like my whole adult life. So
but there's something to be said for when nobody else is doing something. Supply and demand suggests that is the time to do it. Because there are still people who need speakers. Like, I did give some talks during that time. And if you're one of the few people out there raising your hand saying, hey, look at me, then you're going to get hired for it.
Well, you're right about that. And the other thing, I think, when you're starting out, I needed to build something. I needed to build a platform and have videos and go do a bunch of free gigs to get reps in. And now that I'm not working for this company, what am I really going to talk about and build myself up? And so I thought, now's the perfect time to do this. There's not a lot going on, and I don't want to go into that place and run that business into the ground every day. That's not great. And so what if I worked really hard for 2 years, and then when the market came back, I'd be there and I'd have a thing and a story versus just starting when it was good. And that was that thought really paid off, because that is what happened. The first 2 years were brutal, man. Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of times people called me about jobs, and I went on interviews, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And finally, I just said, okay, I have to shut that down and just focus on this. And I got picked up 2 consulting contracts from previous clients, and that sort of floated me through those 2 years.
And consulting to do what?
I was working with Mayo Clinic. On their employment brand. They had all kinds of challenges recruiting physicians and recruiting nurses. So we did this big research project. It was like ethnography. We did all these focus groups. We interviewed like over 400 employees. We interviewed patients, and we came up with all these talent drivers and this employment brand, life-changing careers. I still remember it. And then I did a similar project for Microsoft, for Bing. So I was able to pick up these 2 cool consulting projects, and that was work I could actually talk about from the stage. And it did. I mean, it was good, and it sounded good. Yeah, I'm doing some consulting work with Microsoft and Mayo Clinic, and now I'm speaking, and I took every speech I could get. Man, it was the Yankton, South Dakota Chamber of Commerce, and the Kiwanis Breakfast, and Mitchell, North Dakota, like whatever I could get.
Yes, it's totally true. Airbnb has changed my life. If anything, they have made my life so much better. Like, I used to live in Airbnbs. I lived in over 100 or 200 different Airbnbs over a 3-year period, and I loved it. I became a really good guest of Airbnbs, and I got to know lots of hosts. So when I initially owned a house, of course, the first thing I thought was, I'm going to turn my house into an Airbnb because I travel a lot. So why leave my house unused when I can make a side income by letting others Airbnb my house or come to stay in my house as guests? And having my own Airbnb or being a host for Airbnb has allowed me to do just that. And I've met other hosts. I've actually spoken at Airbnb's host conference. I think it was in 2017. I met so many just nice hosts. It's a great community. And I love, turning my own home into an Airbnb. Like, I'm traveling to Austin next month. My home's going to be an Airbnb while I'm away, and I'll stay in an Airbnb. I'd rather stay in like a 3-story house Airbnb than in one tiny hotel room in the middle of Austin during South by Southwest. So listen, while you're away, your home could be an Airbnb. Many people host on Airbnb, but there are people who are just letting their house sit empty, who've never thought about it or didn't realize their space could be an Airbnb. Hosting can easily fit into your lifestyle and is a great way to earn some extra money. So if you have a home, but you're not always at home, then you have an Airbnb. Your home might be worth more than you think. Find out how much at airbnb.com/host. Daylight savings time is starting up again. Okay, podcast is over. That's all you needed to know. But why do we have daylight savings time? Answer: to give us more daylight from March through November. By setting your clocks forward, it may feel like there are more hours in the day when we initially start daylight savings. But if you're hiring, it doesn't necessarily help you find qualified candidates for your roles any sooner. There's only one way to do that: ZipRecruiter. And right now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/James. ZipRecruiter works around the clock to find qualified candidates for you. Once you post your job on ZipRecruiter, they send it to 100 plus job sites so you reach more of the right people. This is such a brilliant idea for a business, and ZipRecruiter did it. So ZipRecruiter's smart technology also quickly scans thousands of resumes to identify people whose skills and experience match your job. I've used ZipRecruiter, particularly as a potential employee, and I still to this day get messages every day. James Altucher, would you like to apply to be VP of Entertainment at NBC or whatever? So there's just nonstop emails. Like, I got 5 or 6 emails today because a year ago I signed up for ZipRecruiter. So spring forward with a new hiring partner, ZipRecruiter, and find top talent sooner. See why 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Just go to this exclusive web address to try ZipRecruiter for free. ZipRecruiter.com/James. Once again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/James. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. How would you get the Kiwanis breakfast in Podunk, North Dakota?
Well, I'll tell you what I did. I started SHRM, which is the Society of Human Resources Management. Um, I had a relationship with that association at my old employer because we did HR communications. That was part of our portfolio of services, and so we would attend their conferences. Well, it's the 8th largest trade association in the U.S. They have thousands of every city. Rochester, Minnesota has a SHRM chapter. The Twin Cities has it. St. Paul has a SHRM chapter. Minneapolis, St. Cloud, Duluth, they all have chapters. And every month the chapter gets together, and every month they have a speaker. Now these aren't all paid opportunities, mind you. So some are, some you might get $1,000 stipend, and some you come and just get breakfast. But what I got on that circuit, I started speaking for SHRM, and my content got accredited by their governing body for continuing education. I was rated really high, and then I started to rise up. Actually ended up, I've been the opening or closing keynote speaker at 41 state SHRM conferences. And at that level, when it's the annual state conference, they do pay a full proper fee. So,
and what were those first talks about?
The first couple of talks were about the work I was doing. It was about employment branding. I had a talk called, my God, this is crazy. I hadn't thought of this in a while. I had one about employment branding. I had one called Recruiting is Sales, which I would go into a recruiting organization and teach them sales concepts. And then, of course, I had a talk about sales. I think we called it Rockstar Selling. And then I had a fourth talk about leadership, level up your leadership or something along, because those were the two things I had done. And I knew I was going to talk about sales and leadership, but I had to have I had to have good HR content too. And then I developed a talk called Rethinking HR. That was another one I had. I mean, this was a long time ago, but I still, I still get contacted by SHRM chapters to speak. I just got contacted to keynote at a state conference, and I couldn't do it because of my schedule. But they still really support my work, which is just a beautiful thing. It kind of came full circle.
So you kind of like put the foot in the door, and it sounds like a great organization to do that with, because not only are you talking to their chapters, some of which pay, particularly these state annual conventions, but they're all executives at their employers, so they could hire you with real paying jobs.
Correct. I mean that, and so I have this thesis that every time you speak, it should generate at least one net new opportunity, or something's not right. Well, at SHRM, to your point, I could go do a job for Microsoft, but there's 500 executives at Microsoft. I could go do a job for SHRM. There's 500 potential new clients in the audience. And so that started happening and perpetuating too. I'd do a talk at SHRM. 3 people would reach out and say, hey, we're having a leadership conference, or Adobe reached out. We're having our global HR symposium. Can you come give that talk that you gave at SHRM to our global So that's how I started. AT&T, same thing. I did AT&T's global HR conference from those SHRM talks. And then every once in a while, the Louisiana Lottery hired me to do their sales conference out of a SHRM talk. So the HR people are influencing corporate training and development, leadership development, helping plan conferences. And so it was just, it honestly was the perfect place for me to be. Right place, right time, a little bit of luck. And it worked.
And it helped that you did some talks for free in the beginning. Like you're talking about 2009, you're doing the Kiwanis Club or the SHRM Club in North Dakota.
Yeah.
It helps to be free.
Yeah, it did, and not only was it good to get the reps in, but I became a true partner to that trade association. I had done so much work for them. I think it was 2011, 2012. I got a call from the National SHRM office and the woman who booked speakers at their national conference, which I would go do a breakout for free. She said, I have a surprise for you. And I said, yeah. And she said, we want you to speak at one of our national conferences. I said, oh yeah, Letty, I want to be there every year. I'll be. She said, no, not the breakout. She said, we want you to be our closing keynote. And
Wow.
I was like, what? I didn't understand. I couldn't. Dan Pink was the opener, and his book Drive, it just came out. And that was a tidal wave thing. And she said, Dan's going
Yeah.
to open and we want you to close. And I mean, what's great about that is they start promoting and marketing this conference 6 months before the conference, right? There's like early bird registration, you get a discount. They're doing all these e-blasts out, and it's Ryan and Dan and Ryan. And I mean, that was my moment. I mean, if you would have looked at my website back then when that was going on, you would have thought Dan and I were either related or business partners. I mean, I took that and I went with it, and it started to work. And you know what happened then? I got on the radar screen as the speaker bureaus. They were like, "Who is this guy?" And Washington Speakers Bureau booked Dan. They lost the second spot to some guy they never heard of. Well, who is that guy? We don't know who. And that got me on their radar screen. So that was 3 years in, and then it started to happen.
What did someone like Dan get paid for speaking at that?
It's a great
Roughly.
question. Roughly at that time, probably $35,000. A lot more than I got paid at that time.
But then when you get started, like again, like you say, the customers, your future customers, are sitting there in the audience. So when Adobe calls you or AT&T calls you, like 30 is trivial for them.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a progression. I mean, one of the things about this business is SHRM is at their national conferences, they book who they want to book. Rate isn't an issue. I mean, they've had everybody: Marcus Buckingham, Jim Collins, Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton. It doesn't matter. And so, but my fee was my fee at that point, and I maintained the integrity of that. I didn't get in my head, oh well, I bet he charges this, I'm going to quote this. I just quoted what I quoted. She said, "What's your price?" And my price, I don't even remember what my price was, probably $5,000 or $10,000, whatever it was. And they were like, "Great, that's not a problem." And but slowly, incrementally, you create. This is a supply and demand business, so your fee is commensurate with your demand in the marketplace. Still today, but I maintain fee integrity today. I am. Last year, I got a call from a production company. They said our speaker got COVID. It was a Wednesday. Could you be in Orlando Friday? And I could. I was speaking in I think Atlanta actually on Thursday. I said I could be there. And I said, what is it? Well, it's a leadership conference. I said, okay. What are they focusing on? Who was the other speaker? Well, the other speaker was Deepak Chopra, and Deepak got COVID. And now they're hiring me. Now, I'm not stupid. I know his fee is different than my fee, but my fee's my fee. I'm not trying to use that as an opportunity to create something else. It's just like, this is what I charge everybody. This is what the bureaus book me for. That's my rate. And you build some goodwill that way too. It's just your integrity and credibility. So yeah.
Do you ever get like imposter syndrome? Like you go on stage and they're all looking, expecting Deepak Chopra, or they kind of signed up for this conference hoping for Deepak Chopra. And there's you might be better, you might be worse, I don't know, but you're not Deepak Chopra, right? And he's like this famous guy
Yeah.
in a lot of different ways. Like, do you ever feel like, oh my gosh, I don't deserve to be here, or why they're all going to be disappointed?
Yes, and I'll answer that. I'll answer that in two ways. So last year with the Deepak Chopra thing, right? Because that was a corporate event. They didn't have a choice. They had to be there. So they may have been disappointed that Deepak got sick. They'll rebook him. We've got this other guy. I didn't. I just have to be me in that moment. I'm not trying to replicate what he did. But yeah, of course, I'll share with you, and I've known you for a long time. I mean, when I when I sort of made the so Sherm, that day with Dan Pink, I was terrified. I was probably throwing up in the bathroom like an hour before that. It's Dan Pink. Like, I idolized him. Like, I read everything the guy had written. Like, I was trying to become him, and now I have to follow him. And so that was a moment, like, my career started to shift. It was probably, I don't know, 2015, 2016, somewhere around then. I don't even know if we had met yet, but I started to break through. And I remember that year I spoke with Gary Vaynerchuk, Simon Sinek, and that was crazy. He spoke, and then I spoke, no break. 9 to 10 Simon, 10 to 11 Ryan. And I got there, and I remember saying to the agent, "Why would you have me speak after?" Like, can't someone screwed this up? And that was my he's like the greatest leadership keynote speaker in the world, and I'm just me. I can't. And so I would torture myself in that way. I would go through that and be intimidated and overwhelmed. And I there were some experiences that I went through in my life that just helped me recognize that he's a person, I'm a person, I have this experience, he has that experience. I'm being invited to be here because someone thought it, and I have to remind myself of that, because it is easy to get intimidated or starstruck when there's a celebrity or a famous athlete or somebody you really admire. And yeah, I've had to deal with that on this journey, and I think I deal with it better today than I did then. I am able to sleep a few hours, no matter who the other speaker is. But yeah, man, I've absolutely been through that.
There's one time I had to speak at a conference right after Julian Assange. So he's the famous WikiLeaks
I know. Oh
guy.
yeah. Yeah.
And they videoed him in from the Ecuadorian embassy in the UK where he was kind of like a prisoner. And I had to speak immediately after him. And so I was really scared, and I had to figure out what to do. And so he had said something about how like everybody is listening to your phone all the time. Like all the three-letter agencies are listening to your phone conversations all the time. So while he was speaking, I was thinking how I needed to kind of break the connection between the audience and him, or else I was afraid nobody would pay attention to me. So I go out on the stage talking on the phone, and as if I was talking to somebody, and I was saying like, yeah, Julian Assange just said everyone's even listening to this conversation. So then I took the phone and I threw it behind me, and I smashed it into like 1,000 pieces. And I arranged for the cleanup crew to come in with like this 12-foot long broom to like sweep up all the pieces of the phone that I just smashed. And everyone started laughing. And that's how I said, okay, now that's basically the transition. And so after that, I kind of got confidence speaking.
Yeah, well, and once you do something like that too, that's kind of an icebreaker. And if you can get people sort of dropped in with you, and then you just move into your spot, it's great. So, I mean, that's why I always start with a story. It's just a story I'm comfortable telling that I know is typically going to generate a warm response, and then we're off and running, and I can get into my stuff. So, yeah. But it's a funny business that way, though. When you meet all these people that you idolize.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and to that point too, like when things start to slow down, which this seems like a hills and valleys kind of business, or
it
maybe
is.
I'm wrong, like because I
No,
never
you're
really
right.
did it regularly. Like, do you ever think, oh my God, this is it? It's like like COVID. What happened? Like, did you think that's it? My whole source of living is gone.
Yeah, I for sure. So two things came out of COVID. So first, you're right in your assessment. It is a peaks and valleys business, and you're trading time for money. And with very few exceptions, there isn't any value creation in a business. I mean, Tony Robbins, and there's a few exceptions, but not for Ryan Estis. And so COVID, I had my best year ever in 2019, and I just I think I did 84, 85 events, and I felt this just incredible
including
momentum.
Scott's wedding, where you did this
Yeah,
incredible toast.
thank you. Yeah, that was great. Uh, yeah, so Scott's wedding, and that was, and so I felt at that point, yeah, supreme confidence. This is never going to slow down. And then, of course, COVID happened. Everything goes to zero, and that was initially a dark moment. It's exactly what you said. I can't make a living. Like, what am I? What am I going to do, or when am I going to be able to work again? And when we really didn't know what it was or how long it was going to be, but all my contracts were canceling. Virtual wasn't a thing yet, so it was very unsettling. But the next phase of after freaking out a little bit was, okay, that was a good 10-year run. 2010 to 2020, like I did it. I accomplished a lot. I made a good living. What do I want the next 10 years to look like? And to your point, I said, one of the things I decided in that moment was I don't want to do this alone anymore. Not like this. Like, I love speaking. I want to write a book. I still want to do this, but there has to be more than that. And that was the genesis of, we formed a new business with 3 partners called ImpactEleven. And it started it during COVID, and that business is growing. And that's a whole different experience. And it's tangential to what we're doing as speakers, but that is a business with enterprise value and with customers, and we've built a team around it. And so I took another big risk. And it's funny, like, back to sort of, you asked me about my start. One of the things I think I learned was, when these challenges or crisis moment happens, there is opportunity in there if you can pay attention to it. To your point, go contrarian, do what everybody else isn't doing, or okay. And I just remember thinking, wow, this feels awful. And I remember how it felt in 2009. What did I learn? And I'm like, there's going to be opportunity. And I have to start paying attention and thinking about, what do I want to do? How do I want to do it differently? And man, like, all of a sudden you start moving in that direction, and people and things start forming around you. And I'm really proud of that, both that choice and what we're building. And it's a cool community. It's a cool business.
Well, and I want you to describe ImpactEleven, not only because it's related to your book. The title of the book is Prepare for Impact. But I think for a lot of public speakers, particularly a corporate public speaker, you're leaving money on the table if all you do is speak. Because really what you're doing when you're speaking is you're building a relationship between yourself, the company, and the bridge is the ideas that you're sharing with the company. And then to further indoctrinate the company in those ideas requires more relationship building and more opportunities for making money and education and so on. So describe ImpactEleven.
Yeah. So ImpactEleven at its genesis um, it's a community of thought leaders. A good way to think about it is that we're a speaker accelerator. So we've just taken the blueprint, our knowledge. There's 4 founding partners. One of the partners was doing this really on the side, wasn't building it or scaling it, but he would do a weekend workshop, just sharing his IP, his approach, his strategy, his marketing budget, kind of opening the kimono for a weekend, because he'd get 5 calls a week. I want to be a speaker. How did you do this? Can I pick your brain? Can I take you to coffee? You know how that goes. And so he sort of he said, you know what, a few times a year, my team and I are going to do this weekend. And if you want to come, it's accessible. And so he became a friend of mine, and he and I and 2 other speakers, we got together during COVID, during the soft period. And we started talking about, hey, could we do something together? And so that was the genesis of ImpactEleven. And initially, it was a shared services model. We were combining our back offices, but decided to really invest in this business of helping other thought leaders monetize their expertise and develop speaking skills. And it's a membership business. It's a community model, so people pay a subscription. We have live events, we have online learning, and we support our members with distribution. We agents in the bureau community support our events and come out. And so we've built this really robust community of experts and thought leaders. And one thing I didn't even anticipate was I've just met some of the most fascinating people, retired pro athletes, Navy SEALs, adventurers, entrepreneurs, people that have done extraordinary things and now are paid to speak about it. And we built a whole team. One of the cool things about the business, one of the good decisions we made, is we don't run it. We hired a proper CEO. And we have a team that are building out the business. And we just launched phase 2, which is our corporate product. And it's executive presence and presentation skills training for executives. So we're doing ticketed events, offering that as a service, but we'll also come into an organization or an enterprise that wants to develop that skill and competency. And it's just evolving our IP and our approach to training to fit for the corporate client. And
I think this is so valuable.
Thank you. You know what? Honestly, I mean, I don't know if you have any interest in speaking anymore, given or what you're doing. But yeah, you would love it. I mean, it's for people that have written books because there's all this mystery to it. What do I charge and how do I market and how do I get on representation? Should I hire a manager? Shouldn't I? Not to mention the stagecraft, the actual, the anatomy of an insight is one of our blocks of content, and the essence of storytelling and all of the things that go into both building the practice, evolving your body of work, and ultimately delivering that message in a way that creates impact. And then I also, to your point around leaving money on the table, you're absolutely right. I mean, you're trading time for money, and so having a service offering around the throughput, and I have also introduced that. So if you go to my new website, there's a tab called the Growth Lab, which is my offer, call it Beyond the Keynote, which is really consulting or advisory work. But between
that's hugely valuable.
So between COVID was a gift for me because I got off the tread. I never would have done any of this delivering 85 events a year. I mean, but getting pushed off the treadmill, having a chance to step back and say, okay, now what do I want to do? And I wanted to solve some of the problems that you talked about, but I also, you've done enough of it to know speaking, in some respects, writing a book too. It's an isolating endeavor. You are out, it looks glamorous, but you're out there by yourself with your laptop, and there may be 800 people in a ballroom, but you're in the next city you're alone, and it was isolating. And I really felt like coming through this, I wanted to be part of a team and build something again. There are a lot of things about working for a big company I don't miss, and I don't know that that's ever for me again. In fact, I'm sure it's not. But being part of something larger than me became something that was important. I realized that.
One in 8. That's how many people have worked at a McDonald's, who serve millions the best Big Mac and best birthday party they've ever had. Who haven't just seen kids graduate from a Happy Meal, but have gotten help graduating themselves. Because they know the skills learned here
Bienvenidos. Welcome to English Under the Arches.
can help you grow from here or keep growing here.
Hi, and welcome to
1 in
McDonald's.
8 start at McDonald's. And where you start stays with you.
Hey, listen, men's health is important. Men act all cocky and like they don't need anything. But the reality is, as you get older, there's some things you need. And it often feels like we're too busy to take care of our health problems. Like, I'd rather do anything than go to the doctor or the dentist or the pharmacy or whatever. But now you don't have to waste your time if you use HIMS. HIMS, H-I-M-S, HIMS is changing men's healthcare by providing simple and convenient access to science-backed treatments for erectile dysfunction, hair loss, weight loss, and more. The entire process is 100% online, so you get a new routine of improving your overall health faster. Jay, you listening to all this?
Yes, I definitely gonna use Hims from now
Not
on.
that you need it. You're young and healthy.
James, I'm 35.
You're getting there. You might need it. Who knows? But if prescribed, your medication ships directly to you for free and in discreet packaging. No insurance is needed. You can manage your plan on the Hims app, track progress, and learn more about your conditions and how to treat them from leading medical experts. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/James. Could you imagine that? There's a whole section just with my name on it. Hims.com/James. That's how much I am representative of the kind of person who needs Hims. That's HIMS.com/James for your personalized treatment options. Hims.com/James. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See hims.com/James for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. So it's funny, the two big catastrophes in the U.S. over the past 16 years were, in one, you completely changed careers from being an employee at an ad agency to being a public speaker and really making a great living at it. And then the second crisis, you started an entire business. And this business, it strikes me, this has real value in the sense that you could sell this business eventually. Like, it's going to live beyond you.
100%. I mean, it's
And is the business also a speakers bureau? Like, do you help people get booked, or you just have relationships with the bureaus?
Just a development company, and that we want to be real clear. I mean, those speaker bureaus, like, we have such good and long relationships. I mean, they're partners, contributors, collaborators. So our lane is development, their lane is booking, but it's a partnership. We're a big supporter of their governing body, their association. They come to our events, and we have relationships. We have a whole sort of universe or constellation of service providers, from content marketers to website designers to videographers. We have a partnership with Amplify Publishing. So we've really built out. It's a pretty robust, and it's grown quickly. And it's it is exactly right. I don't know that I ever thought about it the way you sort of said it. These two events, these cataclysmic events, and they were so confronting. Initially, as I was making what seemed like this decision, and I didn't know if I was going to be okay, and I was going out into the unknown. And but man, when I think about it, they're probably two of the best things that ever happened to me. And I don't mean to diminish the the carnage or the pain for other people. Like, I wouldn't wish, obviously, a global pandemic, but personally, it forced me to confront myself in a new way and make a bold decision that maybe otherwise I wouldn't have had the courage to make. And there's probably some real learning in that.
Did you get more confidence in yourself each time as a result? Like, particularly like with COVID, that was probably a point where you were losing confidence in the beginning. You come through it and you're able to say, did you like outwardly say to yourself, man, I did that. I survived COVID and came out better on the other side?
Yeah, I do. I do think, you exercise that muscle, right? I mean, so I can look back and say, and I did think about that in COVID. I remember thinking to myself, okay, we haven't seen anything like this. The only thing I could compare it to was 2009, when everything was collapsing and my company was laying everybody off. And what did you learn in that? What mistakes did your company made? Because they've never really recovered, to be honest. It's like, and knowing what you know from that, what do you want to do this time? And you know what's funny? I started writing about it. I remember I wrote a blog post about, who are you becoming? And make decisions today you can be proud of in 6 and 12 months. And don't succumb to all of the fear. Like, be smart, but this is a moment where some opportunities, things could look very different on the other side of this. And by the way, and let's be fair, I wanted them to. As I was reflecting, I realized I want to do the next 10 years differently. And yes, I am proud to be able to say I navigated it. I figured out how to be a virtual keynote speaker, right? And then you know what I figured out? I'm not a keynote speaker. I'm an expert who speaks. And my expertise is still going to be valuable to my customer. And why don't you think about packaging that expertise up in a host of different ways
Yeah.
beyond just the stage? And I never would have taken those steps. New website wouldn't exist. The Growth Lab wouldn't exist. ImpactEleven wouldn't exist.
I like that. I think you just said the title of your next book, which is Who Are You Becoming? Because that's an important concept. Like at any given point, we're not finished. Like I think my big mistake and challenge in life was like after I would sell a company, I would think that's it. I'm done. I'm done growing as a human because I did what I set out to do. I made some money and blah, blah, blah. And then I would go broke because you're never done. And who are you becoming? You're always becoming someone at every point.
Were you going broke because you took outside risks because maybe deep down you wanted to do it all over again? Or like, what was the connection? You sold a company, you could retire, you could be done, but then you go broke. Like there's probably something.
I think I would lose the hunger but I would still want to make a lot of money, like more money. And the combination of no hunger and wanting to make money is the exact opposite combination of what you should have. The real combination is hunger plus wanting to deliver value. And so I had no hunger and I just wanted to make more money, so I would lose all the money.
Yeah.
But if I thought about it in the context of, listen, who am I now becoming? Because nobody wants to become a jerk, right? We all have this inner nobility that we aspire to. And so if I always focus on, okay, well, who am I becoming? How am I next going to deliver value? That is powerful. What you just said is very powerful.
Thank you.
Summary of like all of these different ideas.
Well, I take good notes when we talk. So, and this one's recorded, so that's good. But,
Yeah.
but there is something about sort of this idea of when you cross a certain threshold, it is easy to sort of lose the drive or hunger that got you to that threshold. It's just, I think it's a natural human response. It's like, oh, I'm safe, I can relax. And it's a paradox of kind of conditioning yourself to realize there is no relaxing. There's no, now I gotta keep becoming more. I gotta keep creating value. When the world changes, I have to change, and keeping yourself in that energy. And honestly, I'm in that energy now because we just launched a new website. I just finished a book. I have ImpactEleven. We're launching a new product at ImpactEleven. I feel like, I'm 23 again, just starting my first job. And having that energy and being renewed and being around other people who have, back to the word, and that enthusiasm again. It's and now there's AI, and we just launched Ryan Estis GPT, and people are asking me questions, and we're making it smarter. And there's all these things in the world that are happening, so yeah, I do think there's something about it's confronting yourself, man, forcing yourself to say, who am I becoming? Who would I be proud to be in 6 months, or 12 months into the future? And then lining up and moving toward that version of yourself. Because if you don't have that vision, you kind of can drift. You could start losing money, or spending too much time in Bali at yoga retreat, or whatever your version of not being the best version of you is.
And it's interesting because this relates back to the book and the 30 Steps to Success. We talked about how that evolved. Like you talked about 30 Steps to Success with sales. Chad, your brother, brought it into sports teams and it became 30 Steps to Success, but they had their own definition of success.
That's
and it's
right.
like a manifesto of sorts. I wonder if you were to make your 30 steps now, how it would be different, because it's about who you are becoming. The 30 steps are steps to who you are becoming. So I wonder if it would change, if your personal manifesto would change now.
They would. It would. I think when I wrote the 30 steps, I was sort of, at base camp of my first my first mountain, right? My first summit. So, I
Yeah.
had a ton of enthusiasm. It was all this sort of young, aggressive, I'm going to climb the ladder energy. I was naive. And what I did figure out, to my credit, through all of that and through some discipline, really discipline and self-study, I figured out how to be a really good sales professional. And I was. I mean, I'm proud of that. And that skill really gave me an opportunity to have a different life from where I came from and the way I grew up. And so that meant a lot to me. And I was trying to pass that on to my brother. But in this season of life, I think, going through some of the things that we've been talking about, doing some introspection, I think my definition of success is changing, and I think is markedly different. And so, it'd be interesting if Who Are You Becoming, the steps or tactics outlined in that book, and compare them to this book, they'd be different.
And, you mentioned earlier, like when you're a public speaker, you're on the road 50 weeks out of the year. You're on the road all the time.
Yeah.
And particularly as you're getting older, and look, our good mutual friend, Scott Cohen, he's been on the podcast 2 or 3 times, so the listeners know who he is. He, at our age, recently got married, has a bunch of kids now. Do you ever think about, like, you can't go on the road 50 weeks of the year? Like, you ever think about that life or?
I have. I mean, Scott and I, and our relationship. I mean, when I met you, I mean, we're very, very close, and we went to college together, and so we sort of were on that bachelorhood trajectory together. And he was very clear he wanted to have kids, and I wasn't so sure, and so it would have been tough, and I don't think I would have done that well. And I've sort of reconciled that to a degree. That I'm okay not doing that, but I do think, I mean, it's beautiful to watch him do it, and I do think it's brought a different layer of meaning and purpose into his life, and I think it's softened him in the most beautiful way. And I do think you have to find those places that imbue your life with a sense of responsibility, or connect you to things larger than yourself, or contribution. Like a good way to say it, a good shift is, or the way I think about it is, when I wrote the 30 steps, I had something to prove. I mean, I was in that proving energy, prove my worth, prove my value, prove I belong, prove I'm going to be the number one guy, prove I'm good enough to stand on the stage next to that guy. This season of life, I hope I'm evolving into a place where it isn't about proving anything, where I have something to give. And I think Scott has come into that season in a beautiful way. And that to me, I mean, that comes with wisdom and humility, and falling down a bunch of times, and navigating difficult circumstances. But if this next chapter of my life could be less proving Ryan and more giving Ryan, I think that's a good evolution.
I think that as well. And I was talking to Arthur Brooks, who he writes about this, the different seasons of life, and how when you're younger, that's when you're driven to achieve, and you have this kind of creativity that's very organic and unique, and when you light that up, that drives your success. But when you're older, your creativity is more about kind of connecting ideas and looking at things you did a long time ago and rearranging them in different ways, and like you said, giving, like teaching. So the natural thing is to go from like achieving to teaching others to achieve. And I've just been thinking about this a lot, and also seeing my friends go through this. I think it's hard for me. I think while I do it, I've always been like kind of a natural teacher, and I enjoy that. I still want to have my youthful creativity, and you don't have it in the same way. It's just different.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you really enjoy something, or you're really good at it, sort of evolving out of that season of life is difficult. I mean, I think being aware that, wow, that's hard, and I still wish we were running up that hill, and I had that sort of naive enthusiasm to go just attack that with all that vigor versus this sort of reflective, wise, calculating my risk and my family. It's a different season of life. But I mean, you're a wonderful teacher. Look at the act of generosity that you've contributed through this podcast and your body of work and your writing, and how much of your sort of life experience and vulnerability that you so freely give away. And I think it's helped me. It helped me write a book that I wasn't sure was a good book to write. And I think, what did you just say? And I mean, the cool thing about like doing this kind of work is it has exponential impact. There's somebody in Sydney, Australia that you've never talked to, that you've never met, and you're never going to know, but they hung on something you said, and then they made a different choice. And then that has reverberation through their life and their relationships. And you are doing that in a way, and not to diminish your missing or your nostalgia about the other thing, but just to reflect back to you, I think your chapter of giving is pretty robust.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I agree. It's just like you said, it's interesting how you can get better at something through wisdom, through experience, through knowledge, but have worse results just because you don't have that naive enthusiasm anymore. And that naive enthusiasm plunges you over the abyss time and time again. As an older person, you can't do it.
No.
You don't want to do it.
No, you don't want to do it because you don't want to be in the abyss. You've been in the abyss too many times. And by the way, you don't want to drag other people that you love into the abyss with you. Like those are, and I see it. I see it in my friends too. I mean, you're reflecting, and I see it in Scott. And I know that's true in me. And there is some balance of me. If you can sort of connect or maintain some of that energy. And I have some of it again. I mean, I don't have what I had in the 30 steps going up the hill season of life either. But I think, some new partners and a new project and orienting myself in some of those things. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like when I was that age, I would have moved anywhere, taken any job, done anything, man. There's almost a fearlessness. And, I think you get a little more calculating in this season of life. But I was just with our dear friend Scott, and we're reminiscing and telling stories, and and with the big grins, because it was like, oh man, it was so great when I did this and dropped this and flew there. And that's it.
I remember this is 10, 15 years ago. Scott would just on a dime on a Thursday say, okay, I got to be in China on Friday, but back here on Saturday.
Yeah.
And try to do a business deal that would never work out. I don't think he did any successful business with the Chinese, but he was constantly going back.
That was the other thing. He kept going. That's the best part of the story. He did the next one and the next one. And then I could be on 11 flights over. He's like, oh, I'm in Shanghai. It's great. And he had that energy. I mean, he was relentless.
Yeah. Well, but look, everybody is in a good spot. And really, it's making me think this concept of who are you becoming? Because you're constantly becoming something. And you're different every day. So, but you get to set the direction for the most part. Maybe at least 60% of the direction you get to set. And it's an interesting food for thought. So look, Ryan, ImpactEleven, great idea, great step. It's a way to take this public speaking gig that you've been so successful at for so many years and make it three-dimensional. Prepare for Impact, which is the book by you and Chad. Great book. I learned a lot from it. Like I told you initially, I don't even really like business books that much, but this one really made me think what's my, in a way, I kept thinking of the word manifesto. What's my personal manifesto for the things I'm interested in succeeding at? And what would be the 30 steps for that? And great stories from Chad about all these different football teams, great stories from you. really learned a lot from the book.
Thank you.
And we've been meaning to do this podcast for a long time. And I'm so glad, A, you wrote the book, but I'm so glad we just did the podcast anyway. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
Building a stronger financial foundation? Good plan. Northwestern Mutual's Guide to Good Financial Planning can help you balance spending and saving, set goals, and start creating the life you want to be living. You'll learn how the tools in your financial plan reinforce each other to help you minimize taxes and offset potential risks. Grow your confidence by strengthening your finances today at northwesternmutual.com/goodplan. The Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Now is the time to accelerate innovation. T-Mobile for Business is powering Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix operations and epic fan experiences with secure, reliable 5G connectivity. Because an event this big and this fast deserves a network that can set the pace. See what our 5G advanced network solutions can do for your business at T-Mobile.com/now. View 5G device coverage and access details at T-Mobile.com.